People who pride themselves on their complexity and deride others for being simplistic should realize that the truth is often not very complicated. What gets complex is evading the truth.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be tackling a quote from one of my favorites, Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, he's such a sharp thinker, always thought-provoking.
Absolutely. And this quote is a perfect example of that. It's short, but, well, I'll just read it. People who pride themselves on their complexity and deride others for being simplistic should realize that the truth is often not very complicated. What gets complex is evading the truth.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And I think it's interesting how he starts right off the bat by calling out a specific kind of person. You know, the type who...
Oh, yeah, the ones who love to make things sound super complicated, like it's some kind of badge of honor.
Exactly. They think that using bigger words and more convoluted explanations makes them seem smarter, but...
But Sowell's suggesting that it might be the opposite, right? Like maybe it's a way to avoid the truth.
That's exactly it. Because if you think about it, sometimes the truth can be really simple and maybe even uncomfortable.
Definitely. I mean, think about how often things get messy and complicated in like political debates or something.
Oh, for sure.
Could it be that sometimes, instead of just admitting a simple truth, people kind of dance around it with all this complex rhetoric?
It's like they're trying to deflect from the real issue, you know? Because if they just came out and said the simple truth, it might not fit their agenda or something.
Totally. And I feel like we see this in everyday life, too, not just in politics.
Right.
Like in our relationships or when we're trying to make a decision. We might come up with all these elaborate reasons and justifications, but deep down,
There might be a simpler truth that we're avoiding. Maybe it's something about ourselves that we don't want to face, or a hard choice that we're trying to put off.
it's really easy to get caught up in the complexity of it all.
Yeah. So if we want to get closer to the truth, maybe the key is to actually embrace simplicity a little bit more.
It's not about ignoring nuance or pretending like everything is black and white, of course.
Right. Of course not.
But maybe it's about being willing to step back and ask ourselves, is there a simpler explanation here that I'm missing? Am I making this more complicated than it needs to be?
And maybe, even more importantly, am I avoiding something uncomfortable by clinging to this complexity?
That's a great point, because at the end of the day, if we really want to understand something, sometimes we need to be willing to strip away all the layers and just look at the core truth, even if it's not always pretty.
And that's something I think we could all stand to be a little bit better at. So the next time you find yourself in a situation that feels super complicated,
Whether it's a news story, a relationship issue, or even just a decision you're trying to make,
take a breath and ask yourself, what's the simple truth here?
you might be surprised at what you discover.
You really might. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking out those simple truths, even when they're hiding in plain sight.